Hey, welcome back for our continuing look at how to unleash the hero within you. So let me ask a question. Is being a hero mean that you are fearless, or does it mean that you have to learn to fear? Now, we know, if you're a follower of God, that you are commanded to fear not, and that you were created to live without fear. And that's really important. And God doesn't want us paralyzed by fear. He doesn't want us living our life off that emotion of fear. He wants us to take that emotion that comes rolling in when fear sets in and choose to use it and do something wise with it. And yet, in the Bible, there is a fear that we're supposed to have, a fear of God. Not to be terrified or immobilized by God, because remember what I just said, you're supposed to take the emotion and do something with it. The Bible teaches us that the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. And so when you fear God and nothing else, and that's important, fearing God and nothing else, then you have the freedom to pursue the great adventure that you're called to. As long as you're afraid of other things, you'll always hold back and maybe not chase the things of God quite as hard as He wants you to. See, God doesn't want you to be afraid of Him in the horror film kind of way that He's going to hurt you. But He wants you to understand that when you have that awe, that majesty of God, and you realize how powerful He is, there's a natural fear that comes out. And so the reaction to that fear is, I want to obey Him, follow Him, because what I've discovered about Him is good. And that frees you up to live a life, because fear of God is beginning wisdom. Then all of a sudden you have the wisdom to start navigating this thing called life. Most people I know, when they start talking about God's will, they long for God to give them a roadmap so they can simply follow it. Sadly, that's not the way it works. I guess some people get that roadmap. I never have. Most people I know never have. They never get that clear-cut map. Instead, what they get is a compass, if you will, that points the way. And while we continually ask God to give us direction, He tends to take that compass and point us in the way that He wants us to go. If you're a Disney fan, you've seen the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and you'll be familiar with that compass that Jack Sparrow used, that early on in that very first movie they said, a broken compass? Only to discover that as the film series went on, the keeper of that compass had a very powerful tool, because that compass would point to the desire of your heart, what you wanted most. I think that was one of the most spiritual elements of the whole Pirates of the Caribbean series, because when you're a follower of God, you begin to desire the things of God. You want the things of God. You know that those are the choices you have to make. You know that wisdom compels you to make those choices. And so if you had the ability to hold that compass, like that Jack Sparrow compass would be, and you're a follower of God, that compass would point in the direction that God would want you to go, the desire of your heart. If you think about it, the compass gives you absolutely no notice of what landmarks you're going to see along the way. It just gives you a direction to go. And I think that following the will of God sometimes is following the direction that He sets for you. Instead of having that clear cut, I can check this off, I passed this gas station, I passed this Stuckey's, I passed this, and you make your way down the journey. While we want that, those are markers maybe along the way for us, but God gives us more of the direction. We're moving in the direction. What are going to happen when you're trying to go in this direction? There's going to be obstacles from time to time. You're going to have to navigate that obstacle. You're going to have to figure out how to go around it, decorate it and go over it, go through it, because the direction is still forward. It's moving toward the person, the places that God has for you to go. But it's not obstacle-free. It's not surprise-free. You never know what's going to happen as you're following that direction. You never know who you're going to meet, what events are going to drop into your world, what circumstances you're going to find, but you do know the direction you need to move. And so for you, you're called to a great adventure, and if you're wise enough to follow God's plan for your life, you will have an honorable and heroic life. More often than not, people who follow God with intensity and passion will tell you that the worst problems they've ever had were when they weren't following God's will for their life, when they weren't going in the direction that God had set for them, when they weren't going down the pathway that they really thought that God had set apart for them to go down. That's when they get in trouble. But yet, to a person, they will seem to tell you that when they're following, they've set their direction on following God and being who He created them to be, It doesn't mean that they have a life without stress. It doesn't mean that they have a life without complication. It doesn't mean they don't have a life without trials and turmoil and tribulation along the way. No, they have to face all those things. But they're better able to face them because they're moving in the direction that God has for them. There's great wisdom in that. The question is simple. If you're moving along and you're chasing your life path, and all of a sudden the bottom falls out of the world around you, you lose all of your money, you lose your home, you lose your health. At that moment, and those events happen, do you want to be following the path that you thought was best for yourself? Or do you want to be secure in knowing that you are on the path that God had for you? Because see, all those things can happen. Doesn't matter what path you're on. But I would much rather face those adverse situations and versus the hard times and versus the tough times being on the path that God has for me as opposed to the path I chose for myself, because I can get out there all by myself and the whole thing can fall apart. When I'm following the path that God has for me, I know that I'm on an adventure that no matter what else is going on, because I'm still with God, everything is going to be okay and I'm never alone. See, heroes have discovered that they can risk and they can take the adventure of a lifetime because they know they're never alone, because they know that God's with them each step of the way. That gives them the freedom to chase dreams. It gives them the freedom to become. It gives them the freedom to go after those things, even when conventional wisdom might say, no, that's not a good idea. But if there's a call of God that's driving it, then you're not talking about conventional wisdom. You're talking about the wisdom of God. And God has a wild imagination, and He's called you to follow Him. Part of the fun of living the heroic life that you're called to live is knowing that when you follow God, He's probably going to take you on an off-road adventure into places that you've never seen before, to do things you've never done before, in ways that you've never thought about doing them before. What could be better? That's the stuff that legends are made of. That's the stuff that heroes do. And so you have within you that hero that's waiting to emerge. But it begins when you learn what to be afraid of. The one thing to be afraid of. Have a fear of God. And take that fear and allow that fear to draw you to Him and unleash within your life all of those good things that He has for you. You do. And the adventure is on. And you are on a road that is following the direction that He desires for your life, which is also now the desire of your heart. It can happen. It really can. And heroic lifestyles flesh that out each and every day. Just something to think about. Follow the direction that God has for your life. Always, first and foremost. Allow that to be the compass that drives your life, and quit asking for a roadmap. Use the compass instead and enjoy the adventure of going in that direction and see what happens. We'll talk more about this next time we get together again in The Hero in You.